Hello, everybody. I'm Chandler Klebs. I'm here with my good friend Poffo Ortiz, and we're having another Google Hangout today. And we have a very important topic, perhaps the most important topic ever. And for now, we're calling it "To Be or Not to Be." And I think you'll understand after you listen to us talk, because we have stumbled upon perhaps the biggest question of all time. And what I mean is, we've covered many different topics. We talk about biopantheism, we talk veganism, we talk all areas of morality, philosophy, religion, politics. Actually, neither Poffo or I are all that political. But here's the deal. More important than all of those other things is the value and nature of life itself. And what we're going to be getting into today, because Poffo and I have had some really good talks recently privately, but we needed to get this recorded because we're into some deep stuff about, is life worth it? When we evaluate all life, and there's different layers to this, because there's our lives personally, the subjective experience of our own lives, but there's life in general. But there's more to it than just that as well. And Poffo, we've delved into this on several different levels. And what do you think we ought to go about first? Which type of life will we evaluate first?
Yeah, the first thing I wanted to say was let's make the distinction right off the bat that there are actually several definitions of the word life. So just in comment, I mean, we're not going to get technical with Merriam-Webster definitions, but in terms of the meaning of the word life, generally in philosophical circles and religious discourse, in discussions or debate, we may be talking about life in terms of the experience of life, so that living organisms and what they get from birth till death, the aging process, the experience of life itself. Like throughout life, when we say that word life, there are many different good and bad experiences, and there's travail, and there's pleasure and pain, and joy and suffering mixed in. So that's one definition of the word life. The other definition of the word life that we also use a lot in antinatalist circles and in biopan and in philosophical discussions is life itself, in terms of the biological organism, in terms of the biological organism, the distinct sort of individualized manifestation of omnia, what I would call, the life principle is giving birth to and creating these differentiated forms. So a cat, a dog, a sheep, a rabbit, a human being, like a tree, a plant, a flower. Those are forms of life. So we have to make that distinction. So when we say that we value life, like generally I'm talking about those individual manifestations of life, those unique forms, those unique biological, basically those individual life forms. So those two distinctions there. And then is there another? I feel like there's another in terms of holistically, as like the universe, like the whole of existence itself. We can also say is synonymous with the word life, because I would say, because it always leads to, I mean, I guess Trick and others might disagree, but it always leads to the production of, it always leads to the manifestation of consciousness. So that whole process itself, which in that sense I would say is synonymous with nature, with the universe, with God. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good rundown, and I'm not sure I caught all of it, but that's the benefit of recording. But yeah, so that's the thing about it, is when we talk about life, it's because we live in a world where human languages have a single word with more than one definition.
Yeah.
So much confusion arises from this, and then people argue semantics, and and this becomes very clear in all the controversial topics. People debate about what, whether, for example, the unborn are alive or not. Or they argue over the existence of God and the definition of God. And we're hoping to move beyond the semantics and definitions that people quibble over constantly, and hope that we cover what we're talking about, regardless of what you may be talking about when you use the word life. Anybody listening, if you use the word life, if we can cover all of these different things that somebody means, And so let's see. Now I have some thoughts about how we could go about this. Unless you,
I want to say real quickly. I want to say real quickly to just we can start us off, and then you can build on it if you like.
Right.
It won't take too long. But I value life in that I value the individual organisms that are experiencing life. See, there's the two definitions right there. So I value life. I don't always necessarily value life in terms of the experience of that organism, because what if you're born into poverty? What if you're born into a completely dysfunctional home life, and your surroundings and your environment, you're in an abused, a situation where you're being abused and neglected, or mistreated or molested. I don't value the experience of that life. I would say I'm appalled at the experience of that life, as I am with all farm animals and what pigs endure, chickens endure. Their life absolutely is atrocious, and we don't value their existence. We value them, and we want to improve the quality of their existence, the quality of their life, because we value their life in terms of those individual organisms, their ability to experience pain and suffering, the capacity they have, to feel pleasure and pain. So we value the individual organism, but we don't value their lives, and that kind of bleeds into the idea of, is it always best to just always preserve life, always preserve the experience of life? I don't necessarily agree, because then we get into mercy killing and euthanasia. Like, we don't value life to the degree, to the extent that we value everyone's experience, because not everyone's experience of life is the same, or is pleasurable, or is salubrious or healthy. Like we value the organism itself enough to at times to give someone a quick, clean death. If they're suffering, if there's no way out, then we extinguish their life, because we value their experience. We value them. So like when I say I value life and I love and respect and honor life, I don't mean I'm gonna make a bunch of babies. I'm gonna proliferate the human race and procreate and continue to overpopulate, because I'm an antinatalist. So in that sense, I don't value what human beings are doing, and I don't respect this continuous proliferation in human societies. But I value the individual humans within those societies, and what they're going through and what they experience, enough to the extent, and so much so that I don't want to create more harm and suffering by having children, by reproducing. So there's
I would say that, to sum it up shortly, we're caring about quality of life, not just quantity of life. For example, rather than having 20 children like the Duggars, instead pour the same resources that takes and pour that into improving the quality of life that's already here. It is out of a respect for the life that is already here that somebody would focus on that rather than procreating. And
teaching and educating what a powerful thing it is to procreate, that there should be so much forethought, and there should be so much consideration, and people should be much more, 1,000 times more conscientious before they agree to have children, because of the after effects. What an incredible innate, inherent power most of us have. Some people are sterile from birth, or they have some kind of issue, but this incredible power that we have to reproduce ourselves, to reproduce other life forms, that is not something to be taken lightly at all, and it's absolutely not given enough consideration and forethought.
And like, here's how I would say it, is that
in social context, in terms of
right.
our culture. But no,
Yeah. Well, how I would say is that people procreating is not the result of an act requiring high intelligence or reason. And I think that's the problem. The problem is that, like, let's take something else. Like, let's say playing chess, or even some of the video games I play, or, you know, even simple tasks, or, you know, computer programming, or writing a book. All of these tasks that require great it takes great skill, it takes time and dedication, it's hard work. See, if procreation was hard for people to do, I have a feeling people wouldn't do it. But because it's so easy for people to have sex, that is why the procreation happens, because there's no
it is
conscious
the
thought.
easiest. It's the easiest biological imperative to follow, besides eating and sleeping and shitting. It's the easiest biological imperative. The most one of the most instinctual. I would put it on par with desire for food, with hunger. It can be stronger psychologically because it's also psychological. Literally, testosterone and hormones and stuff can affect your thinking, can affect your brain, and women will have the the maternal instinct that is very pervasive and strong. But what I want to say is, like, but our society glorifies sex. Our society glorifies externals and sex sells. So, like, you have something that is literally the cause of all the harm and pain and suffering in the world, and yet the act itself of say lovemaking or procreation or sex or whatever is so easily like misunderstood and sort of idealized and glorified, and there's such a fixation on physical pleasure and on our desires and on fulfilling those needs with no thought whatsoever on the children that will be brought into the world completely non-consensually. Yeah, you can consent to having sex, but that child has no say in it. That child has no say in where they're born, what their name is, what religion they're brought up in, what culture they're brought up in. That's all on the responsibility. That's all completely on the shoulders of the parents, and they don't think about that enough. If every hot woman and every ad that had some beautiful girl and it's appealing to the fleshy desires of the culture also showed right next to it, this can lead to STDs. This can lead to unwanted pregnancy. This can lead to emotional heartbreak and abuse. This can lead, like a warning. Like I'm thinking of like Surgeon General's
Yeah,
warning
yeah,
on the
yes.
side of the package.
Yeah, there should,
Like this can lead to abortion and horrible traumatic experiences later on, or this can lead to children that will then suffer and in incredible responsibility and that financial problems. This can lead to all these different things. I wonder then if it would still be as, but they're not marketing it that way. They're marketing it because they're feeding they're using they're manipulating the sex drive basically, and we're visual creatures that we respond to visual stimuli, and that's one of our most basic fundamental needs. So it's,
yeah,
and for the
your
sake of
audio,
money, because
your audio cut out for a second there, so you may
okay,
have to repeat what you just said.
I'll go a little bit slower, but I was just saying, and it's all for the sake of money because we live in this profit-driven monetary system. So that's the first thing that needs to go. In order to ever have an ethical society that's free from corruption, we have to do away with the monetary system, because you don't have an ethical incentive. You have a profit-driven incentive. So it's all ass backwards. All these different forces are working against each other, and that's why we have overpopulation. That's why we have teenage pregnancy, unwanted pregnancy. That's why we have STDs and spousal, marital, domestic violence, and all the problems that go along with sex and marriage and relationships, because it's not well thought out. It's not considered ahead of time what an incredible gift and a power that we have, that most life forms can reproduce. It's actually one of the qualities of life. One of the 7 qualities of life is the ability to reproduce, like all plants and animals, and even cells. That's an amazing thing. So here's where we got to draw the distinction. That's a beautiful, incredible, amazing thing because it can create this biodiversity, this multitudinous life forms, and all these incredible, unique experiences, and all this beauty and joy and wonder. And yet, if not considered responsibly, it can literally be the cause of all the problems in the world, of all the problems in your life, and even as in with STDs and stuff, lethal sexually transmitted diseases, and venereal disease. So it's a double-edged sword, man. I mean, we have this incredible power. I don't think that it's being taught.
Yeah. Yeah. And
fundamentally powerful it is, I guess. So it's a beautiful thing, but it can also be a terrible thing. So I love life, but I don't necessarily love the perpetuation or proliferation of life.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because, first of all, people trivialize it. In this culture, sex is just sold as nothing. It's used as a money-making thing. It's sold as a product, basically. And look at this. Like, here's another example. This applies to procreation, but doesn't necessarily apply to sex, because consider that people, they do IVF, people who are unable to conceive just by having sex. There's something weird, so then they do some special process where they'll pay huge sums of money for some people to help get them pregnant. And to think, and which I always thought was a little bit odd, that people would be willing to pay.
I've had cousins do it. Yeah, I've had cousins do it. And through either what do you call it, through a host, artificial insemination, a surrogate, or they adopt. I mean, I 100% agree with adoption if you want to raise a child, if you're just so gung-ho to foster and nurture another life form. There's plenty that already exist that are in need of good parents and good homes, and that I see nothing wrong with that at all. If you're financially stable, if you're emotionally stable, if your environment is conducive to raise and nurture a life in a healthy, positive way. But we don't agree. We're anti-natalists, so we don't agree with the idea of creating your own, reproducing your own, and adding to the stress on the environment and your environmental footprint, your carbon footprint, and all of just the drain on the resources. And I want to be clear about something. The earth provides everything we need. The earth is not in want at all. The earth as a planet, the terrestrial globe of the earth itself, the ecosystems and the environments can provide us everything that we need, and there's no shortages in nature. The problem is the cities that human beings that in human cultures that we're condensed into are these unsustainable, dysfunctional, inhumane and unsanitary, unhealthy conditions. So the populations that are forced into the human societies that already exist are what make, and the way that the amount that we're breeding and the amount that we're what we're taking from the environment, at the rate and the amount that we're taking, that's what's making it unsustainable. But if we lived in harmonious accord with the earth, if we lived in a symbiotic relationship with our environments, with other plants and animals, the earth can provide and sustain us all. It's just that human beings are not living in cohesion with the environment, with nature. They're taking too much. Completely. If you don't know anything about animal agriculture, if you don't know anything about it, watch Cowspiracy, and it'll completely break it down for you, and you'll see the environmental costs there and what's actually happening. And so vegetation can provide for everyone. We have enough vegetation. It's that the animals, the land that's being used for farm animal production, that's what's completely
Yeah, your audio cuts out sometimes, which is really disturbing because we're getting into this. Can you hear me good?
I can hear you. It hasn't slowed down at all on my end. I mean, it might be fine in the recording. So,
Yeah, it
but
could be.
I'll talk a little slower if you want. I'll talk a little
Yeah,
slower.
yeah, and it's interesting because here's the thing: is we consider that human society is extremely wasteful. Human society, as it exists now, and the monetary system, like you're mentioning too, wastes all kinds of resources because food just sits in a grocery store and rots because people don't have the money to buy it. And that's the greatest tragedy ever. Like, that's not the way it should be. I mean,
Or it gets thrown away, or good food gets thrown away because it's not perfect. Externally, it has blemishes or something because, again, we're appealing to consumerism, so we want to make the prettiest looking product. So if something has a defect, it's perfectly fine, but they'll throw away just boxes and boxes of perfectly good produce.
I know
It's wasted. Yeah, it's completely wasted.
yeah,
That's why so
I
many people
know.
go dumpster diving. They're into
Yeah,
that because you can save money that way. You can really cut down on your footprint that way and live a more sustainable life. But go ahead.
yeah, but that's the point is that no matter how much the earth provides, if humans mismanage it and prevent other humans from having that and say we're not until you pull out this magical non-existent thing that we call money and give us it, we're not going to let you have food, we're not going to let you have water, we're not going to let you have electricity because of that this society that we live in. Basically, people are it's a miracle that anybody ever has enough money for all the things they're required to pay for. And that's why this monetary system causes a lot of trouble. There is no doubt that there would be that, like with the animal agriculture, without a monetary system would fall apart very, very quickly. Because
Yeah,
if it wasn't profitable, then it wouldn't happen.
yeah, and we're getting into, well, yeah, if we had a resource-based economy, an ethics-based economy, an ethics-based culture, society, we would see the damage, the harm it's doing, the harm and the damage that it's doing to the environment would be highlighted, and um we would sort of direct and we would design our culture based on the needs of the populace and what the earth provides and what is sustainable rather than what looks good, what's going to benefit a few. We're talking about the structural violence. You're getting into the idea of the structural violence that's created, this disparity, because of those few who are in power and because of the cultural myths and stuff that are just so pervasive in our society. But let's try and stay on point and get focused on what we talked about. So we're talking about the pain and suffering. We're talking the stratification and the disunity and the want and the need that doesn't have to be if we obviously if there was more equality and things made sense, if it was a sane society and we did things based on natural law rather than on consumerism or corporatocracy or capitalism. Okay, so that's our experience right now. So we would say, why bring more life into this existence to experience that? It makes no sense. Now let's step back for a minute, okay? And on a broad scale, there's always going to be suffering and struggling and pain and misery in life. No one's ever going to have an ideal life. I mean, the Buddha, whether he was fictional or he was exaggerated, the tales of his life exaggerated, he looked at the suffering around him. Siddhartha, he looked at the suffering and he saw and he was appalled, and he knew that it was wrong that he should be so privileged and so fortunate while his people and those around him suffered. So he gave all that up, and that's when he went out to seek enlightenment. And so this raises the question, the most pertinent question that we're trying to get to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep no more, and by natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub, for in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. So this is from, obviously, Shakespeare's Hamlet, and it's raising that question, that, like, is existence even worth it? Because there is so much suffering. And then he says, even when you sleep, he's worried that even when you dream, you might have troubles, and there might be more travail, in your experience. So we are antinatalists, and some antinatalists are against the proliferation of life in general. That if they could, they would push that button, and they would end, existence itself, because of what existence creates for those individual life forms that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, yeah, and this is important.
Those individual life forms are so.
Yeah, yeah, I hope I didn't miss anything you said, because sometimes I don't hear your audio, so hopefully it's not as bad on the recording as it is from me hearing. But yeah, like recently I came across the distinction. There's actually a word that was actually recently invented by this one guy that I happen to know, from how I understand it, called ethylism. And apparently, the difference between antinatalism and ethylism is that ethylism applies to like all species, all life, not just against human procreation, but against the experience of all life, because it's more suffering than is worth it, you might say.
Right. And I guess this is Trick's position as well.
Yeah, it does seem to be, because we've heard enough of Trick to know exactly what he's saying. Like it. And he's right about the wildlife suffering. I'm not going to deny that. The suffering of wildlife that is either burning or freezing or being eaten alive by predators, that suffering is immense and stays there even if the human race goes extinct.
Right. But naturally, if we could prevent the telomeres from degrading, and in doing so eliminate aging and sickness and disease, if we could effectively conquer and beat death, if we can become immortal, which I believe we will, the integration of nanotechnology and stem cells and all of the advancements that that we're making and the direction we're moving, incorporating these biotechnologies into our bodies and stuff, we will eventually prolong our lives as we have, and prolong our lives even further, and eventually be able to preemptively eliminate so many of the diseases that people suffer from. And obviously, if everyone switched to a vegan diet, we could feed the world 10 times over from all the grain and the vegetation that we're feeding the animals right now. So it's totally plausible. It's totally possible. Yeah. It's not. This isn't a utopian ideal at all. It's
right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm talking like the next. Do we then in turn? All I was trying to say was, does that naturally then start to bleed out in a good way as we extend our circle of compassion to the animal kingdom, to wildlife? Yeah. And will we take selective animals, and will we maintain them and keep them, like sterilize them, so they don't continue to breed, and just keep certain species alive and create ideal habitats for them where their needs are all of their needs are met, so there's no more competition, there's no more violence, there's no more. And that's way down the road, but not necessarily like playing God, because remember, I'm a pantheist, so I believe we are gods. We are the gods of this world.
Yeah, so basically, here's what we're talking about, Poffo. You know how a lot of people really love their pets. They've got, it may be a dog, it may be a cat, or it may be a pig, or it may be a hamster, whatever it may be. A lot of people who aren't even necessarily vegan, they have a pet that they really love. And that pet is spoiled rotten. You know what I mean? Like they do everything for that pet, and they always feed them on time. They make sure they're getting their nutrients. They give them toys to play with. They give them a good place to sleep. They give them a bath. I'm talking the full treatment. People who care for their pets the way they do, some people do their own children. You know what I mean? Now, basically, what if humans were capable of practicing that on a grand scale, like what you were talking about? Like if you have these animals that are no longer just exposed to all the suffering in the wildness, but instead live on special uh, safe reserves, or sanctuaries would be the right word, and their needs are met. They don't need to compete over food. The animals don't need to kill. No, the carnivores are even satisfied and no longer hunt and kill. Imagine that. Imagine if humans could get to that level. Because here's the thing, like I have, okay, here's how I would say it. Now,
We've done it with wolves. We've done it with wolves and the wild cats that became our domesticated cats.
yeah,
So it's just, you just take that and you expand it, and it's totally possible.
yes,
Not at this
yeah,
time, but
right.
it is theoretically possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so go with me on this for a bit because I have a little bit to say here. Now, okay, now there exists the way nature is without human interference, and there still is a lot of great suffering by these animals. But then, as we know, in the current human society, most humans are carnists and automatically are adding on to the suffering of wild animals, as well as breeding these domesticated animals and imposing worse suffering on them than wild animals experience. So vegans are doing like the least amount of harm possible. What vegans do is we say, yes, there's suffering, but at least let's not add to the suffering. Let's
Right.
take out our portion that we've been contributing. Let's stop, Now, but what if we can go even beyond that? And this and I think everything rides on this, Poffo, like literally everything. If humans can come to a time, if human society can become one such that the existence of humans literally reduces the suffering, that there is less suffering as a result of the human race existing than there would be without us. If we could get to that point, then maybe it's worth it. Maybe our existence is worth it. And that's the
And we're,
question. Can
and
we
we're
get to
talking on
that
this
point?
planet, and we're talking on. We absolutely can. I believe that we have the greatest chance to do that. More than any other species that's ever existed on this planet in recorded history, in the fossil record, as far as we know, we're the most highly advanced species, evolutionarily speaking, in terms of our cognitive potential, our computer manipulate our environments, to restructure things, to build, to innovate. Yes, but yeah, we would start with this Earth, and then as our species, this is like an enlightened species that we can then spread out. We can explore the cosmos. We can help, bring education and wisdom to other planetary systems, other life forms, and exactly like what Star Trek represented, what the Federation represented in the Star Trek series. That's what we would become. But there are others who say that none of it is worth it, and they take a much more pessimistic outlook, and they would say that there will always be, whether we fix the problems we have in human societies or move on to animal life, there's still going to be other planets. Because nature itself is in the business of creating pain and death and suffering. Well,
Right.
I say that nature is in the business of creating life, and that pain and suffering is an aspect of that process, is an aspect of that experience. So overall, I don't think that nature is this evil force that's against us, that's out to kill us and out to harm us. Nature, in times past, and in antiquity, literally was our enemy, and it refined us, and it strengthened us, and it made us what we are. It made us incredibly the dexterity that the human race possesses now is 100% due to nature being so harsh, and we had to evolve, we had to adapt, and that also is a gift from nature, our ability to adapt and to acclimate to environments. So I see this I see it like the horrific, terrible aspects of life are there, and they're enough to make you want to just give up at times, especially for animal rights activists and people who are very empathic and sensitive like us. But at the same time, I see the grand design. There's a greater picture here that it's, I don't know, man. It's fundamentally green. It's not black. It's not bleak. It's not death. It's fundamentally like a giant I'm just picturing like a nursery, like an orb. What's the word? I can't think of the word. I'm thinking that's this giant like garden of life that is continuously sprouting and spreading out seeds. And through panspermia, I believe that's how life originated on this planet and throughout the cosmos. So I see everything organically and biologically, and I see the universe itself as a living system. So I know that like there is untold, unheard of amounts, unfathomable amounts of horror and atrocity and pain and suffering, and I see it, and I'm fully conscious and aware of it. But at the same time, I also see human beings and individuals fighting it, and life itself is anti-entrophic, anti-entropy. Like it is continuously fighting against the degradation of the cells. The second law of thermodynamics, everything's winding down. At the same time, like everything is also, proliferating and expanding outward and evolving and adapting and surviving and meeting the needs. And nature is nurturing us. It's not just out to kill us. It's out to feed us, and it's out to clothe us, and it's out to make us smarter. And it's also in the business of evolving us and advancing us. So you got to look at the big picture. If you're looking at nature and you're seeing it from that really negative, cynical perspective, I would say that's myopic, and that's only one part. I wouldn't disagree with you, but I would say that that's only one portion of the big picture. The larger picture is, that we are evolving, that we are here, that we have been successful, that apes, primates, specifically Homo sapiens, have been so successful that we've graduated to this stage, that we are looking back, contemplating our own existence, contemplating the origins of the universe, and we have technologies and machinery and instruments that can actually detect this stuff, and read like what happened 14 billion years ago. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and see, here's what I would say is the very fact that we can contemplate, that we can even think about the value of our own existence, the very fact that we have that luxury is an amazing thing, because that right there just shows the power of that we have developed, that we can actually analyze it and consider the question. Because I would say that now keep one thing straight. Very few species probably lived long enough to even get to that point to contemplate this. Second of all, very few humans of our species actually contemplate this stuff. How many actually consider it? How many are just these mindless zombies that do things without thinking? But there are a few of us.
Yeah.
There are a few of us like you and me that we're true philosophers, and we really want to dig deep into all this.
I think it'll always be like that. I think as a whole, it doesn't seem like we're evolving consistently, especially ethically and morally. We're not evolving consistently. Our technology has just far surpassed our ethical, our fundamental ethics are completely flawed, and we're nearsighted, and we are selfish and completely egocentric. But at the same time, there are select individuals, and there are pockets and facets within the culture all throughout history that have excelled, that have created incredible designs and inventions and have advanced our culture. And I think of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, and how far we've come due to these great men and women and great thinkers. So it's like we're moving along, and as a whole, many people would say we're the worst thing that's ever happened to this planet. We're a blight on the earth, and we are just we're the scourge of the world. Like we literally rape and destroy and kill and consume everything, and we're just a bane to existence. And I'm like, well, Yeah, that's true. We are, and many human societies are, especially patriarchal, male-dominated
Yeah.
societies, the warlike culture. But at the same time, um, you know, look at how far we've come in preventing diseases and treating illnesses, and just look at how we have spread across the globe, and we are also very successful. So what we do with it is entirely up to us. It's completely in our hands. Whether we're going to be like the healthy mold, or like the healthy like plants and vegetation, like the moss that grows everywhere and it's beautiful and it's green, and it actually it produces more life, and it gives like a habitat for other species. Or we're like the black mold that actually grows and is unhealthy, and it's toxic and it's poison to any who inhale it, and we spread everywhere and just dominate like a cancer, and we don't live in symbiosis with our environment. So it's entirely up to us which route we take.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because the ironic thing is the people who wake up and realize that humans are a blight on the planet, and they realize, like, those people who understand that the problem of human society and what we're causing to the planet and all these other animals, those people who understand it, those people are not the problem. In fact, because they see it, they are the solution. And unfortunately, the trouble is, even though those people are the highest potential, those people who tend to be vegans, by the way, you'll find I mean, almost a lot of antinatalists point out what humans do to other animals, and that's one of their primary reasons why they're an antinatalist. But so those people are not the problem. In fact, they end up being part of the solution because they wake up and change their ways. And so their existence, I mean, is a wonderful thing. The trouble is that they end up being a very small minority, whereas the rest are completely brainless. They appear to be. You know what I mean?
I just have to stop, and it's just my own conscience is speaking to me. How probably sanctimonious and egocentric we sound at this point. We probably sound very self-aggrandizing, and I don't know how to not come off that way when I do feel that we are thinking and focusing on the most relevant and pertinent issues, and most people aren't, because most people are to their through no fault of their own, they're born into a society that they are inculcated into the idea of family and work and career and money and pleasure and whatever it might be, sports and entertainment, and these things are just and petty. Yeah, like I wish I could clone, all the great philosophers and the great humanitarians and the great thinkers and the radicals and the revolutionaries, and just have more of them, as opposed to just the breeders and the just your common typical average everyday person is not really well educated, and it has to do with they don't have the luxury of doing so. They're not they don't have the time, or they don't have the environments that are supportive of that. But then again, I would say that no one, with the advent of the internet, we have no excuse. Like, you can literally look up something, research something, and learn things like at lightning speed now, whereas we never could do that before. Even with the great Alexandrian libraries, all the scrolls and all the ancient wisdom of all the of antiquity, you could access that, but nowhere near as fast as Google. I mean, Google has become God.
Yeah.
Like, literally, you can ask it any question you want, and you can get an answer like in a minute's time. So that's pretty prolific and profound. And all I'm saying is, if you don't know about something and you have the internet, you really have no excuse, because you can learn it like in 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the internet has changed the game entirely, because now, see, here's what used to happen. If somebody held a minority view, whether that view is right or wrong, but when for example, I find people on the internet who say, I thought I was the only atheist, or I thought I was the only vegan, or I thought I was the only antinatalist. They didn't know that there were other people like them, because all those people tend to be hundreds of thousands of miles away. you know, but through the internet they
Right.
find that this small group of people that thinks like them on a certain issue. The internet has changed our ability to communicate and break out of the fact that we are so different and don't fit in where we're at. Because what happens is, to me, that makes me feel better rather than just being isolated, being the only person who thinks the way I do in Lee Summit. And I'm pretty sure I'm the only one in this town who is anything like me, you know?
Sure. It's yeah, and so everything we're talking about represent actually a lot of positive advancements and things that are encouraging, things that we can that can really fuel our philosophy in terms of whether it is life-centered or I don't know, annihilation-centered, like geared toward the extinguishing of life, like whether we're necro philosophers or we're bio,
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
we're biocentric, necrocentric, or biocentric, because
Yeah.
to say that better to have never existed. Better to have never existed at all than to suffer and blah 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 blah. Well, yeah, but it's not only, we're not just suffering, man. We're also contributing, and we're also improving, you know, improving things and trying to make a difference and trying to make advancements. So you gotta be realistic and holistic about it. I've always said that it's not an accurate perception of reality, because you're literally only fixated on the negative and you're not seeing the potential and what could happen. And we are all subject to time and chance. It's not, things don't always just happen like clockwork. There's trillions of different factors always, in our lives, that the most unexpected thing could happen, and you never planned for it or prepared.
Yeah.
And yet it could be something that is fortuitous, or it could be something that is horribly damaging and bad. We're subject to bad luck.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's a gamble, and that's the amazing thing. It's that it's not all set in stone. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So literally, we do the best we can, and it's okay to have hope. It's not unrealistic to have hope, because life is filled with so many variables. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and this is an important distinction, because I think now this is something I have to mention here, because I'm sure you know this, Poffo, that when people come across this antinatalism philosophy, what they do is they say, well, if you hate life so much, why don't you kill yourself? And people say this, and I'm going to explain why this attitude is wrong. Okay, first of all, it is not that we necessarily hate our own life. In fact, I think many people would agree that their life is happy, but they also understand that they are an exception. They're the lucky ones, because they know of all the other suffering of all these other people. So it's not about us personally and how good or bad we think our lives have been. That's not what it's about. And second of all, just because it may be better to never have been does not mean that it's better to just suddenly stop existing now. There is a difference. For example, and here's how I would say is, because good has come from the suffering in my life and it's led me to become the person I am now, it's a waste if I do not put that to good use, if I do not put what I have learned to good use to make some kind of a difference before I die. Then my suffering was pointless if I just kill myself now. And so that's the thing, is it's not about people committing suicide. This isn't some kind of suicide cult,
It seems like a really oversimplification of the notion, of the idea that you're against procreation, you're against reproduction, the reproduction of life. That means you don't value life. That means you hate existence, and you have no respect for biological life. It's the exact opposite. It's because we care so much about biological life, we care so much about the experience of those individual organisms, that we don't want to unnecessarily subject them to any further burden, organismic burden, as Peter would say. What does he call it? Pernicious. He's got all his own terms. He calls it pernicious. pernicious something, I can't remember, but he's got his own terms for organismic burden. That's the biotheistic version of sin, essentially, which to me is animal agriculture and and reproducing and religion, but he doesn't see it that way. But like it seems like you and I, as sensitive as we are and as acutely aware of the atrocities as we are, we still maintain some kind of a positive, just a positive perspective and outlook that regards life as being filled with purpose. Not necessarily from the get-go that all life inherently, automatically has some predetermined, predestined purpose, but that we as conscious organisms can literally choose to make the best of the situation, and we can give it purpose. We can bring meaning to a situation that otherwise may not have may have had a different outcome, essentially. So
absolutely.
And
yeah,
go ahead.
Here's how I would describe it: is okay. Our purpose is not, for example, it's not a predetermined purpose by the plan of somebody else. Because that would be like saying that your purpose is whatever your parent wanted your life to be about. No, it's not what your parent wanted your life to be about, nor if there was a God that created the universe, it's not what that God wants your purpose to be. Your purpose is what is something you will know after you've had your experiences in life. And then, I think one of two things happens. People either do get depressed with the suffering and they end up killing themselves, or they want to make some good. At the very least, their purpose becomes to reduce the suffering and to not repeat to others what was done to them. And so they become an example to other people and hopefully make a difference. So everybody ends up with, some of us end up with a purpose, the rest of us get depressed and kill ourselves. It's kind of an ironic twist.
I wanted to say, really, it really pertains to the situation. The lead singer of Linkin Park just killed himself this morning. And I never cared for that band, but I mean, again, it's terrible. It's a tragedy. And then of course it's drug related. It always has to do with drugs and alcohol. And I just wanted to make that point that you were saying some people get depressed, they kill themselves, or they turn to drugs and alcohol. They always will seek out an escape because they don't necessarily want to die. They just want to ease their suffering. They want to comfort and placate that loneliness or that feeling of being unfulfilled. So that's why drugs and alcohol are such a crazy problem. We have all these addictive substance abuse problems because people are suffering.
Right.
They want to live, but they don't want to live in these conditions, and they don't have the proper coping mechanisms. They don't have the support from family and friends, so they turn to substances, and then it causes more problems.
That's a good point, Poffo, because I mean, obviously, so many people they turn to alcohol, they turn to drugs, both legal and illegal. They turn to sex, they turn to religion. They look for something else that drowns out their suffering. They find something else that numbs them to their suffering. And that's the thing about it, is the very fact that so many have to do that obviously shows the greatness of the suffering, how common it really is.
Absolutely. I'm still, in shock, like Robin Williams, that he killed himself, like this man that brought so much joy and laughter and levity to our society, was in so much pain, and no one knew. I mean, some people always had the idea that he was bipolar because of his comedy acts and how his manic behavior, but I had no idea. I was completely just, it was devastating, and it's just the irony of it that someone like that could be in such excruciating psychological, emotional torment that they literally can't see another way out. They can't envision going another second, another hour, and that's horrible because he had the money, he had the family, he had everything that would have helped him, and yet he couldn't see it. So it's very important that we talk about perspective and perception, because the antinatalist perception, perception of antinatalists and the perception they hold themselves is often generally very negative, and it's misunderstood. So I don't know. I am pro-life as you are, but I'm pro-positive experiences in life. So if you are having absolutely the most horrific, emotional, psychological pain, and you've suffered abuse, and literally the ethical thing to do, the merciful, compassionate thing to do is to end that life, then I'm all for it. Okay, it's about the quality of life. It's about the individual. It's not just about it can't be simplified and dumbed down to the idea of just, we can't kill, let's kill nothing. Because we, as our opponents would say all the time, we kill microorganisms and bacteria, and we kill plants all the time to sustain ourselves. So life feeds on life. Life, in the experience of life, life comes into existence, it comes out of existence, but it always transforms into something else. So essentially nothing ever really dies. That's the pantheist perspective.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, what I wanted to say about that is, I tend to okay, I come pretty close to being a Jain. I'm pretty close. You know what I mean? But see, yeah, it's true that we cannot stop killing things entirely. Obviously, all the microorganisms, or accidentally stepping on bugs when we walk through the grass. And
we can stop killing big things. We can stop killing the bigger organisms, the land animals, land mammals. Yeah. That's totally easy to do, but go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Because here's what I think anybody should be able to hopefully understand this. Okay, now somebody can, for example, they could accidentally step on a bug that they don't see as they're walking to work or something. You know what I mean? You may end up, when you're driving somewhere, there may be a squirrel that runs in front of your car that you don't even see it, that you end up killing. Those kind of things are not avoidable. They're not, because accidents happen. But nobody just goes and has an accident where they kill a large animal like a human or an elephant, or it's not like you're gonna see this thing. It's not like you're gonna accidentally step on an elephant and it dies. Like, that just doesn't happen.
Let's try to simplify this for a minute. Like, we know that death is a part of life, and many deaths are accidental, and I would say there's two. Obviously, the extenuating circumstances, I would say three. Self-defense. If you have to kill something to defend your own person, your own body, to protect yourself or to protect someone else that you care about, that's something that's a direct threat to your body, bodily harm. So self-defense, it's completely understandable. It's justifiable. Accidentally, because of our sheer size, our scale, as you were mentioning, we're larger organisms. We're sort of in the middle in terms of the organisms on this planet. We're not that large, but we're not that small either. We're right in the middle. So there's going to be smaller life forms that we're going to accidentally kill without even knowing it. So we can't be held accountable for that. We're not culpable to that. So we're not going to, freak out about it and fixate on that. We still honor and respect life. If we do it accidentally, we feel bad, and then we move on, and that's it, because it wasn't intentional. And let's say the third would be killing, a mercy killing. Committing, extinguishing a life, the cessation of life, for the purpose, for the sake of that life. If someone is in excruciating pain, if an animal is there's nothing that you can do, and the humane thing to do is to euthanize it. So those justifiable forms of death, of killing. Aside from that,
oh man, your audio is. Yeah, I could not hear you for like 3 or 4 seconds.
Well,
you may have to repeat it.
Yeah, hopefully it was recorded, but I guess I could summarize real quick and say there are 3 justifications for killing, for death. self-defense, accidentally, or mercy killing. That's all I was saying was, and those things are perfectly understandable. Other than that, there is no justification for murder or death on any level. And if you come up with some argument, I guarantee you it will fall into those three categories. If it's outside of those three categories, then you're a carnist, or you're a selfish person, or you really don't understand the nature of existence of reality. But the point is, death is a part of life. We can't avoid it. We can't avoid it in those circumstances, but we can absolutely avoid it in every other circumstance. Or natural death. I guess the fourth thing would be dying of old age, dying of a sickness, dying of disease, but we're not directly contributing to that. That's part of the natural process of entropy of life forms as the telomeres degrade and we get diseases or natural disaster or something. So life happens and there's death in life. But I would say that overall, the overarching theme of life and experience is more life, is more experience, is growth and expansion and and education and gaining knowledge and wisdom. And these things, I believe, are they trump the negative aspects of life. We can't escape death right now, but I think eventually, like any other disease, we'll be able to conquer it. And I keep mentioning the telomeres, and anybody that doesn't understand that, look into the research.
Yeah, like I think
from causing aging. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say is basically there are things, to sum it all up, there are things that can be avoided and things that can't. There are types of death that can be avoided, and that's what we're focused on. And there's those things that can't be. Because we know, Poffo, you and I know, everybody, if they're honest with themselves, they know something will kill them one way or another. It may not be it may not be another human being that murders them.
No one gets out of this alive.
Right.
No one gets out alive in this.
Yeah. Basically,
but everyone gets to live. But everyone gets to live before they die. So think of it. Is it really so pessimistic and negative? Oh, if you're just fixating on the death aspect, on the end result, well, yeah. But what happens before you die? You live. You live and you experience, whether it's for a short, what is it? The shortest lifespan is a fruit fly or something. The shortest lifespan to I think a turtle or a whale or or one of these great big redwoods or Methuselah, the tree that's like over 2,000 years old. And so it doesn't matter. The existence happens. It's going to happen to you. And I think we should embrace existence and make the best of it, make the most of it while we're here, since we're already here. We got to get to this point though, man. I was about to get to it. If you could choose to come into existence or not, would you? That's the real philosophical existential question. Because we're sort of going around, but let's explore this.
Yeah.
If you Chandler Klebs had the choice to be or not to be, would you go ahead and choose to come into existence, to suffer the things you've suffered, to experience what you're experiencing now? Or would you say, no, you know what? I'd rather opt out. I'd rather not be a part of it. It was too much bullshit. It was too difficult. Knowing what I know now, if I had the choice, would I just say I'd rather not? I'd rather not exist at all.
Yeah. I would say that I would rather not. Because knowing all that's involved. And now I would say, Poffo, that my answer may not be that of what other people would say, because obviously that does depend on how your life actually went. Because some people do experience a lot of joy, a lot of pleasure with very minimal suffering. It does happen. And then others, they experience a greater ratio of suffering to where even their pleasures are nothing. It does, you know what I mean? You
personally, because of what you've experienced and because of what you've been exposed to, you would choose to not exist.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that. I totally understand that. And I would say in response, I hope that you recognize and you realize how much of an impact, how influential your life has been, the the contributions you've made and the ripple effect of how many other lives you've touched just through your podcast, just through your shows, just through our friendship, how it's helped me, how it's helping me right now. So even if you would choose not to not be here, I'm glad that you're here. I'm sure glad you're here. You know what I'm saying? So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that you don't have that choice. but again, we got to ask that question because we got to find out about whether, I don't know, whether nature knew what it was doing or not. You know, that's what we got to like sort of determine. Or does nature know best, or do we know best?
Like, because I don't need to die now. There's plenty of time for that later. You know, and your and stuff are influential and actually helps people. That right there gives me a reason to continue on. Because sometimes I'm not so sure, because from my perspective, I don't see the evidence of it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not seeing it because I don't get feedback very often. And I don't get very much approval or positive comments on anything I publish online.
I sure hope for the last like minute and a half, like everything went blank and I couldn't even hear you. So I just kept it going. I turned off my camera for a little while so it wouldn't use as much bandwidth. But I hope that everything you just said was recorded because I couldn't hear anything. But we'll just keep going. I think there's some weird forces at work on this podcast, like the universe.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but just for safety, maybe I can repeat what I said, but in a shorter way.
Sure. Truncate in a succinct fashion.
Basically.
Reiterate.
Hey, Poffo, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know what's going on, man.
Yeah, we got
like,
disconnected.
It
said my internet connection cut out or something. So I don't know what's up with that. So here's the thing: is that.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. See it now. Apparently, the hangout's still going and it's still being broadcast. So I think we can continue from where we left off, and hopefully we won't have any more disconnections because I was about to make a point here. The point is that
you got two. There's two icons at the bottom though, like for your name. So should I cancel out, click one out, or what? I've got two boxes for you at the bottom.
Oh, that is weird. How is that? Okay, that is weird. I wonder why there's two of them.
So completely like close out and then join the call again right now. Can you do that, or will it end the broadcast? Can I keep the broadcast going? Oh, there it goes. It just dropped off now. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Just some technical difficulties, people. Let's not worry about it. Accidents happen, like we were talking about.
Yeah, and I life is irregular, man. Right. But say it one more time, man. Maybe it's really important. So say it.
Yeah. See. Basically, Poff, when you tell me that I'm in a good influence and that it's making a difference positively to people, the hangouts I do or the things I write, things like that. That is what makes me want to continue my existence and keep on living to do these things. Even if I would have rather never have been at all, the fact is I have been, and I need to make the most of it. Because once I die, all of the stuff I learned is lost, which is part of why my focus on recording things is so important, because only the things that are recorded or written down will preserve past my death. So I'm going to extend past my death. I'll still have influence even after I'm dead.
I agree, and that's and in the philosophy of biopan, that's how we live on. That's how we live forever. Either genetically, if you're stupid, genetically through your children, you pass on your genes, and you basically are reproducing other smaller versions of you that then go out and do whatever they're going to do in the world, whether good or bad, or through our influence, through the art that we create, the books we write, the people that we've touched, the how we've contributed. It's our character, and that's how we live on. But sort of atomically, on a molecular level, like, nothing ever really dies. Everything, energy just keeps getting transformed. So we become a part of the tree, the grass, the flowers, the air, whatever. We always live on in some other form, just not in the same coherent form. But that's the pantheistic view of death. Now let's turn it around for a second. Ask me the same question. Okay. If I had the choice,
yeah. Okay.
Would I choose to exist? Would I choose to exist or not exist, or not be, knowing everything that I know now about the world, knowing what I know about my life? This is very complex. This is very nuanced. So give me a chance to just get this out, okay? For myself, if I had the choice, I would rather not exist. I would rather not come into being, because of the things I've experienced, because of the things I've seen, because of what I've suffered, just because of the difficulties in life, because of all the shit that I've been through, okay? I would rather not exist if I had that choice. But that's if it was up to me, and that's for if it was only for my sake. If you were to ask me for me, what I want for me. But knowing what I know now, and knowing what I know about who I am and what I think I've done in my life and what I'm trying to do, for the sake of others, for the sake of that stupid cat sleeping on the ground right there, for the sake of my mother, who is now doing holistic alternative methods of cancer treatment due to my influence, for the sake of my girlfriend, who I tried to help when she was in a rotten situation, and every other person I've tried to help, and every other animal I've rescued, and every time I do activism, every person that I've counseled and played therapist to and influenced and tried to do good, and for the sake of anyone who reads my books, I would choose to be here for that influence, because I believe that I'm doing the best that I can do with the talents and the gifts and the abilities, the skills that I have. I'm trying to do as much good as possible. So for the sake of the world, I would be here. And then there's another aspect to this too, but I would choose to be here for the sake of others. If it was up to me, if you were to ask me for my sake, I would choose to not be here. But I would be here for others, because I think that I've done some good, and I'm trying to do some good. And the other aspect to this, okay, it's okay. This was the thing that I really wanted to get to in this podcast. Is existence good? Is it inherently, intrinsically good? Like, is it good or is it evil? Is it bad? Is does the struggle and the suffering and the torment and the pain, psychologically, emotionally, physically, all of it, is it worth it? Does it outweigh the positive pleasure? I don't know, but here's the point right here. Okay, I'm going to bring it home. Since I'm already in existence, since I'm already here, and I have no say over that was done without my consent, but I'm already here, and I know a better place, and I feel like I have answers, and I feel like there's some good that I can do. I'm gonna do as much good as I can, and I'm gonna say I'll stick around, I'll do what I can since I'm already here while I'm here, and I don't want to die until I've actually accomplished something. I don't want my life to end until I've earned, my existence, because so many people have helped me along the way and have supported me and provided for me, and I'm saying, not nature itself. I don't owe it to nature, but I owe it to the people who are alive and the people who have and the people who've died, the people who've passed on. My grandmother, both my grandmothers, and people who have helped me along the way. I would say for their sake, I have to keep going, and I have to still be here because I gotta do something with this existence. I gotta make something out of myself. I gotta make something out of my life. I have to do something extraordinary because people have gone to extraordinary lengths to help me, and they've sacrificed a lot to help me. So I owe it to them. So what I'm saying is, it's like that in that movie Kingdom of Heaven, and there's that phrase above the blacksmith, Orlando Bloom's character. It says, I don't know exactly what it says. I'm just going to paraphrase, but it says, "What am I if I don't, unless I make the world a better place? Like, what am I? How can I be a man if I don't leave the world a better place than how I found it?" So that is my philosophy: is that I would rather not be here for myself, but I'd rather be here for others. And since I'm already here, I don't want to get taken out. My biggest fear is not death, Chandler. It's a wasted life. My biggest fear is dying too soon before I've accomplished everything I need to accomplish, before I get my shit together, before I get my books published. I don't value my life because I value all life, but I value my life because there's so much I need to do, and there's so much that needs to be done, and there's so much that I can contribute to, and I believe I can make a difference. So that's why I choose to remain alive, and I will take care of my body, and I will continue this existence. So we're both antinatalists, and I think we pretty much have a good positive view on existence. So
I would agree with you. I would say the exact same in my situation. Although for my own sake, I would rather not have been. If I only consider what I want, if I only consider my own experience, my own desires, then absolutely there's no point in my existence.
See, but they're interconnected, aren't they? They're intertwined. Because then I say, but if I wasn't around those feral cats that I adopted, they would have never. What would have happened to them? Or if I wasn't around, what would have happened to that person that almost killed themselves, and I saved them that day, and I talked them out of it? What would have happened? So I think it's almost like intertwined. You can't escape it. Like you say, I wouldn't want to be here, but then again, I would, because look, like if I wasn't here, this is It's a Wonderful Life. This is the great story of It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah, and it's like he's shown by the angel. He's shown what life would be like if he had never existed. It's a beautiful movie, Jimmy Stewart. And I love that, man, because like the world, I think, would be a lesser place if it wasn't for people like you and me. And I don't think that that's cocky or conceited or self-aggrandizing, because I get accused of this constantly.
Yeah, well, because you bring up that movie, It's a Wonderful Life. A lot of people like that movie, by the way. Now, the point is, George Bailey, in that story, he was given the opportunity to see if events of people he knew, what their life was like if he had never existed. He was able to see that. However, let's suppose there's another person who was not like George Bailey, but somebody who only caused pain to everyone around them. And then they have that same experience, and then they find out the truth that people were better off without them. See, it can go that way too.
Sure, yeah.
And so in the end, it's like the value of your life is something that you may not even have access to, but other people, and whether you benefited them, they know whether your life was worth it to them, regardless of whether it's worth it to you. And I think that's powerful.
We're not alone in this existence. We're all interconnected, and everything is interdependent on everything else. So that's what we have to remember: is everything we do affects everything else. And you can isolate yourself. You can go out and live in the mountains somewhere. I mean, that sounds like paradise to me. But the truth is, you'll still be affecting your immediate surroundings. The plants, the animals that you interact with. That's the one thing. A correlation. Like everything in life, literally, is connected to everything else. So we have to recognize that. So we have a responsibility, once we're here, to do the best that we can, try to do as much good as we can in the limited amount of time that we have, because life is transitory and everything is impermanent. I always say that everything fades, everything crumbles, and nothing lasts forever, but nothing ever really dies, because everything is always influencing everything else, and everything is transforming everything else. And the people in my life, you remember Ethan, and we had that episode with him, and he's going to be with me forever. And the people that have touched me and that I've touched, it lives on as long as someone's alive to carry on their memory. Those human beings, those influential humans, will never die, because their characters remembered, their strength, their tenacity and will, and that's what's important. Is that that's how you become legend, man. That's how you create a legacy.
Yeah, you said something very important, Poffo. You said something. Let me see if I can remember exactly how this was. That your greatest fear was not death, but an unfulfilled life. And see, the tragedy, let's take Ethan, for example, since you mentioned him. The tragedy with him was not that he died, because we all die eventually. The trouble is there's so many unfulfilled goals that he had, things he would have done had he not been killed by a car,
Yeah.
And that is the tragedy there. I mean, I think that it's tragic for us to not fulfill our life. Once we learn what our purpose is and know what we want to do to make the world a better place, then to not get to fulfill that and have something kill us early, that's the tragedy. And I see that. Now, here's something.
I'll let you talk about but let's talk about purpose when you're done with that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, there was something else that I wanted to consider. Now, we have evaluated the fact that our own lives, at least at this time, are not worth it for our own sake, but it's worth it to us if we are benefiting other people for the sake of other people. And that's where we get into the altruism. Because, Poffo, you and I have talked about this altruism and people who claim that everything we do is entirely selfish, that we only do things to benefit ourselves, but that's simply flatly false. That's just not true. There is altruism. There are things we do with no promise of reward, and I think this is something that needs to be challenged.
Well, straight up, like I was having the conversation with you before we started the broadcast, and I think an old friend of mine, I think it's an old friend of mine from college, mentioned that she's thinking about going vegetarian, and I didn't jump right to the thing and say, well, let's screw vegetarianism, just go vegan. No, I supported it, and I was encouraging, and I was like, that's great. Have you seen What the Health yet? Because she started mentioning some health issues and how it's so much better for her, so she doesn't have these inflammatory reactions and stuff. So I mentioned What the Hell, and immediately the point is, I was on the phone with you having a very important conversation. I immediately stopped and said, I have to respond to her. I have to respond. I have to let her know that there are resources there, and then I'm going to be there for her. And I expressed that. I said, I'm here for you, and if you need any advice, or I can send you links to resources. I have a plethora of websites. This is what I do. But the point is that to me at that moment. Why? Not for any reciprocation I'm going to get down the road, not because it makes me feel good, not because on some level I think I'm not a good person if I don't do that, and I have to do that in order to maintain a healthy self-esteem or something, or to validate my own existence. I literally just feel it's the right thing to do, and this can save animals, this can help the environment, this can maybe help her physiologically, help her in terms of health. I know that it's the good, moral, ethical, just thing to do. So I just choose to do it.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with me. That's nothing about that that's selfish. So that right there was a perfect example of how this concept, this rationalization or justification that everything that we do is selfish, that everything everyone does is inherently selfish. Even when it's unselfish, it's still for selfish reasons. You're still doing it for you. Well, that's not true, because mothers are the antithesis of that idea. Everything they do, they do for their children, for the next good mothers, let's say, for the next generation. They do it for their children. They sacrifice and they sacrifice and they give their all, and they're probably not going to see the return in their lifetime. I mean, some will say you should have kids so the kids can take care of you when you get older, but I'm like, that's a pretty damn selfish,
Right.
egocentric way of
Yeah.
looking at it too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well,
I'm just saying, mothers completely shatter that myth, because I feel like, and in the animal kingdom as well, they naturally do this, and they just, whether it's ethically or just a biological instinctual drive, nature has put it in us to be magnanimous, to give of ourselves, you know.
Yeah. And here's another example. Let's consider the ultimate example of sacrifice. One where somebody literally goes into a situation that kills them in order to save someone else.
Right.
Like I've heard of this story about a man jumping on a grenade and having it blow him up, but
to save his fellow soldiers, to save the others around him, because the density of the body, it completely destroys him, but you've covered up that explosion and saved. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or taking a bullet, you know, or every hero, every comic book movie, the Dawn of Justice, and he sacrifices himself. He's holding the kryptonite spear, and he plunges it into Doomsday, and then he even pulls him closer to make sure that he kills him, and he knew that he was gonna in his own life. Yeah, every hero story.
Poffo,
Go ahead.
Okay, forgive me. But there's a story that I must tell you, okay? Because this relates directly.
Does it involve unicorns or ponies?
No, not this time. I'm saving that for later. No. Okay. Right. So here's the deal.
All right, shoot.
There was a story.
I'm all ears.
This was in the news. This was a big news story. It was about a movie theater shooting. I don't know. You may have heard of this, where some guy who thought, this guy thought he was the Joker from Batman.
Yeah, the Batman shooting, yeah. Yeah,
and so how the story goes is that he fired several shots, but here's what happened. So there were men who took the bullets and to shield their girlfriends.
Yeah.
And that is an interesting thing, because that right there is an example where they're using their own body as a shield, where they know they're going to be killed, but it's to protect somebody else. That's another fine example of an altruism. And let's get one thing straight, Poffo. When somebody dies doing something for someone else's benefit, then they know they're not going to get a reward. There is no reward then.
The only argument, I guess, if I could play devil's advocate, is to say that somehow it's so ingrained in their psyche that they're just going to respond and react that way, because they want to be remembered as an altruistic, self-sacrificing person. So they're still doing it for selfish reasons, but so that's the argument there. But there are just like hundreds, thousands of cases of this, and the greatest stories that we tell each other, and the greatest novels and the greatest heroes are the ones who give up their all and give everything, you know, for the sake of their tribe or of their family or whatever. I just watched the last Planet of the Apes movie, and I don't want to give anything away, but there's just a lot of that notion is in there, man, of altruism and giving your all, you know, for the sake of others, for the sake of those who are coming after you. That's what life does. That's what humans do, and there's no way to verify, to justify that the idea that these other philosophers and thinkers are saying is that everything we do is self-serving and it's completely egocentric. It's not true.
There's far too much evidence that shows us that people really do have altruism. Stuff where it's obvious they're not going to get a reward. And let's think, Poffo. Okay, now for example, I'll just use myself as an example, although much of this will apply to you as well. Actually, this will apply both of us greatly. Okay, now we're both vegan, not because we get some kind of reward out of it. I mean, there's the health benefits, which are just a side effect. But that's an afterthought that happened after we already went vegan for the animals.
It's not the reason I went vegan at all.
Right. And so that's the thing is, and additionally, going vegan and being a vegan activist especially causes us an immense amount of suffering because of how other people misunderstand us and treat us and falsely accuse us, the social stigma, the social situation. People get disowned from their families for going vegan. Like, seriously.
I was about to say it's not going to get many points with my family. I'm already estranged from my family, and this is one more thing that they will never understand. I mean, let's just say in general they don't understand it right now. And it's something else that's causing isolation and separation, and furthering that gulf that's there. It's not, and it's not for my own sake. It's not for, what the fuck? It's not for some kind of I've heard this. I've been accused of this, that like you're making these posts and you're doing all this stuff because you want to appear so self-righteous, and you like being this moral authority so you can judge other people. And Peter has said this to me, is you can be so sanctimonious and judge others and look down on others because you like, because it makes you look good. You're vegan because it makes you look good. That is the furthest from the truth, and I don't know any vegan that thinks that way. It's so ridiculous, man.
Yeah,
like, it's literally for the animals. For the animals, that's it, man. It's for the animals and for the environment. And for my health, I'm glad it's I'm gonna live longer, and it's gonna benefit me health wise, because I don't want to suffer and I don't want to experience these these illnesses and all these degenerative diseases that come about through consumption of meat, eggs, and dairy and animal products. So that again, it's not. My dad asked me, and he's just like, he thinks of it as like a diet, and he's asked me how much weight I've lost, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm like I don't know. I don't weigh myself. Like it's not. It wasn't for health reasons. It was, my philosophy led me to it. But go ahead.
Yeah, that's the thing about it, Poffo, is, first of all, people misunderstand us so much that we don't have a good reputation. It doesn't give us a good social image. So certainly there's not much of a reward in it for us. Nope. And let's go into something else. Now, for example, me and my vow of celibacy, and you got your vasectomy, Mm-hmm. See, here's the thing about this, Poffo, is that is an example. Whether somebody just vows to never have sex, or whether they get themselves sterilized because they understand the unethicalness of procreating, both of those things are just different methods of us doing something that we know to be right, not for a reward. It's not like for some weird reward that we get for doing it. I mean,
I can argue the other side, though, because I could say, oh, you just wanted to be able to have all the sex you want. You wanted to be able to have unprotected sex and not have to worry about it, so you could be more, you could be more promiscuous and stuff. And so that I can see that argument, and I could say that, yeah, honestly, that could be part of it. That was part of it. But I did it. No, the reason I did it was because I never wanted to have children. I never wanted to be a bad father or bring a child into this corrupt, screwed up world. And that was the core of it all right there, is I did not want my child to suffer. I never wanted to be a bad parent. I knew that I could never be responsible enough or financially stable and to give my kid the life that he or she would deserve. So that was it. Of course, I really enjoyed sex afterwards. I think like the week after, I wasn't supposed to, but I was like it was great. It was like a burden lifted. Obviously, if you're responsible, you're with someone that is clean, doesn't have any STDs or whatever. You're in a committed relationship. But so yeah, it benefited me, but that's not why I did it. Like it was both. It was still forward thinking and thinking about my potential unborn children, which motivated me.
Yeah, and see, this is the thing about it. I understand, there would be some people who would accuse you of that and try to claim it was a selfish motive. But I always look at that, and I look at you getting a vasectomy. I look at that is the altruistic thing. That's the right thing to do.
Responsible thing to do. That's the way I see it.
Yeah,
I really felt like that. Do anything else in this society, and I'll go ahead and state for the record, in this society, to do otherwise is completely irresponsible. Like, if you want children, adopt. But to continue to procreate, to continue to conceive, you're just not seeing the big picture, and you're not thinking about that child. You're thinking about yourself. You're only thinking about on some level. There is no reason to have children that does not fall under the category of some self-serving interest or desire or want or need that revolves around you.
Yeah,
About
absolutely.
that child,
Yeah.
you're thinking about
Yeah.
you. Danny would disagree, and he that's his contention. Is he says on that last podcast that he wants to have children so that he can influence them because he knows that he's responsible, because he's not afraid to take risks, because he wants to influence the world in a positive way through his children, because the intelligent, enlightened, decent people are the ones that need to have kids because so many other people are having kids. So we have to outbreed them. We have to somehow, make the good babies to outbreed the bad. And I'm just like, it just seems warped. It seems twisted. And again, it's not for the sake of the child. He's using this child in that sense.
Yeah. See, Poffo, here's what this comes down to. That means it's a competition. You have different groups of people who are going to compete, and it's like, hey, I could have more babies than you, and we're going to take over the world because there'll be more of us, because I can have sex more than you, and I can produce more babies than you. It's like, it turns into a competition, the very antithesis of the world we need, where there's no more competition, no more scarcity. It's like,
sure. I think because it's a rationalization. Honestly, it's just a justification after the fact. Because again, the point I just made, he's still using that. He's using his child for something. I mean, you want to talk about the most self-centered, selfish people? Watch a few episodes of Game of Thrones. Like, all they do is use their children. They use their children as to secure their legacy, to for battle, for whatever. They marry their children off, and it's so the caste system and the whole what's the word, man? I'm trying to, like on the Titanic, there's like the different levels of class. The classism is the absolute. It's such an evil thing, and that is the ultimate disrespect and really selfish motivation when it comes to children, is using your kids like that, to further your own agenda. You are born to this life. You had no say in it, so you're here. Well, you're responsible for you, and you're only responsible for you, and that's it. Like, don't, take this godlike power that we have. Obviously, we don't contain it one sex within one gender ourselves. No, gender's not the right word. Within one sex, male or female, we don't contain that power. But when we unite, male and female, or get and donate sperm or whatever, we have this incredible power to reproduce life. That should not be taken lightly. 95% of the population is not ready for that responsibility, and they should naturally. Nature, and is learning through us, through the smart, celibate, and vegan humanitarians. It's learning that just to reproduce is not the best thing. Not at this point, not at this stage in the game. It's a beautiful, incredible ability that we have, but not everybody should have that ability. Yeah. And I know Peter would jump in and say, see, fascism, totalitarian. You want to control, you want to sterilize people. You would control who is and who, when, and where, and you would dictate a minute. And I'm like, you know what? I really would.
Yeah. See,
I would control that, because that is the cause of all the evil and violence and suffering in the world. How do people not see this? Is bad parenting.
Yeah. And here's the point, Poffo. What do people do? They look to governments to, or pray to their God, whatever. They look to some authority to stop the harm that's being done to them. Notice that. They want someone to step in and stop harm being done to them. But then, for some reason, when a harm is being done to massive amounts of sentient life, then they're all opposed to having anything imposed on people. They want people to be free to murder who they like. You know,
I chuckled not because it's a funny scenario, but I knew where you were going with it because it's after the fact. It's after the fact. Why can't we have a preemptive strategy that takes into account that sex makes babies, that irresponsible, dysfunctional, emotionally unstable, psychologically imbalanced people should not be reproducing?
Yeah.
Why do we grant them that right? Why do they automatically have the right to make babies, adopt animals, for example, and just own pets when they abuse and neglect their animals, leave a dog fucking tied up outside to a stake and starving out in the cold? Well, anybody can just adopt, go to a shelter, go to a pet shop and buy a dog. But they can own other life forms. Why don't we make it illegal to own other life forms? Why don't we make it illegal to proliferate and procreate life when you're like nowhere near responsible enough to handle that huge obligation and burden and really that gift that because that's a gift, man, to be able to care for a life. And any fool can make a baby, but it takes a real man to be a father. You've heard that phrase. So don't get me started. This is one of the most probably one of my most intense passion, other than like religion and Christianity. So you get me started on this, man, I'm gonna go off.
yeah, that's just it. Here's the thing about it, like, it's true. It's far too easy for people to own other sentient animals. It's ridiculous. And see, here's the thing is, I don't want anybody to ever call me an owner of anything, of any animal. See, if let's say I did have some kind of a pet someday to give them a better life, to keep them from harm, if anybody refers to me as their owner, I'm going to chew them out. Like, seriously, man. No, I am not an owner. You can't own another life equal to your own. You can't.
That's why the language. That's why the language within vegan circles has changed, and we call them companion animals. They're not pets. They're not. They're not ours. I know this very well because I cared for ferals. I raised ferals, and I know. Yeah. I will never own them. I'm caring for them. And I know because the long process it took to sort of domesticate them and get them used to me, I know, I understand this situation just very intimately because like I could never just grab them. I had to just earn their trust. And it was all, how do I say this? It's all on them. Like I left it up to them if they wanted to come in the house, if they wanted to be near me when I would interact with them and stuff. So like I really understand that. I didn't go and buy my cats. Like I cared for my animal. I cared for the animals. They're not even mine. I cared for the animals that were living around my in the property, and I still care for them. So it's like that. Now I have to do things against their will, cut their nails, keep them locked inside for their own safety, for their own health and stuff. So I have to be responsible and kind of control them in that way. But I know very well, especially with cats, because cats are very independent. Okay, you mentioned something earlier though, dude. I wanted to get back to, but it was so important. You were mentioning something about life. It was about existence. I wanted to kind of take it to go back to the broad discussion of okay, hold on, I think I got it. Can we do better than nature? One of the laws of ecology is nature knows best, right? Can we do better than nature? Like as Trick would say, as Peter would absolutely oppose. He would say, no, nature knows best. Can we now?
By the way, speaking of nature, I have to pee.
Okay, the call of nature.
Hold that thought. I'll be back.
Sure, man. Sure. You're
Okay, so
you were making faces there for a
yeah.
little while, and I thought I didn't know what was wrong, and I guess you're like your eyes were watering, like you had to go for a while.
I'm glad you caught my joke. Speaking of nature, I have to pee.
I would say that nature knows best, except when it comes to and when it comes to reproduction. I would say in every other way, I would say nature knows best, and we can look to nature for all the answers, for all the cures to our diseases, for how to operate in society, for how to coexist. We can learn from nature, except when it comes to sort of moral and ethical questions of how we treat one another in our societies, in our cultures, in our communities and stuff. Because nature is all about recycling. It's all about finding new and innovative ways to grow and expand and express itself. It, it teaches us everything we need to know. But here's the question, because this is the philosophical sort of existential subject here. The topic is nature just this machine that is just producing and producing and producing, and it has no thought, it has no mind, it has no intelligence of its own. It's just this this cold, uncaring, indifferent. I don't know what you can equate it to. I see nature as a living system, and I see it as supportive of all life, and I see it as not indifferent in terms of provision and of the species, but possibly indifferent or maybe just blind, because it's up to the individual to find their own value and worth and purpose, and seek the meaning and care for themselves and stuff like that. Because nature is sort of flipping. It's going from being this like force, this spontaneous, autonomic, self-sustaining, all-pervasive force and that's moving in and through everything, to becoming now individualized and self-aware and conscientious, so that it's looking back and it's become subjective. It's no longer just this internal eminent thing that is operating everywhere at all times, that has no mind, but it's now developed a mind through conscious sentient life like us. So now it can learn that cooperation is better than competition, that we don't have to just live for survival, but we can live for the sake of others. We can live for the sake of something that's greater, that we can have a more expansive perception of our existence, so that we can look ahead to future generations, and we can think altruistically, and we can behave benevolently, and we can live in a sustainable way, so that it's not just self-serving, because almost all animals are completely selfish, in the sense that they are only thinking about where their next meal is going to come from, how to meet their biological needs, basically. And then the more successful organisms, as we've talked about before, they're moving in that way towards altruism, and many do cooperate with one another, and they'll do things magnanimously, for the sake of others. And you'll see sacrifice in nature. You'll see it. You see the hints of morality and ethics building there, in the primates and the cetaceans, and higher, say, the mammals, the highly evolved mammals. And reptiles. I mean, you can't put it past any animal. They can all learn this. They can all learn to grow and advance in this way. So the question is nature evil? Is it out to get us? Are we smarter than nature? Should we try to counteract and sort of shortcut this that creates suffering? Or maybe nature knows exactly what it's doing, because the awareness of that suffering has now come about through its own children, through its own manifestations, us. See? So is nature really blind? Well, it started off very primitive, and it was all kill or be killed, survival of the fittest, fight or flight, the reptile brain, like literally physiologically, the oldest parts of our brain, the brainstem and the reptile brain, they are complex. And now with the neocortex, with the frontal lobe, the prefrontal lobe, and the ability to think and reason and decide and have moral decision-making skills, like now nature has a conscience. So
Yeah.
what do you say? Like
Okay.
is it one or the other, or is it just is it a gigantic organism? Is it a being that's in the process of transitioning and evolving to become self-aware and cohesive and conscious and coherent?
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way, Poffo. People often say, well, that's just nature. That's just the way nature is, as if there's a set way, that things have to be. And I'm here to tell people there is no set nature. Nature is not set in stone. The very thing about nature is it changes. The very thing about life is it changes, is that it does evolve. And that's the whole thing, Poffo, is nobody can ever use this logical fallacy of saying that's just nature. There is no valid naturalistic fallacy, because nature can be whatever it evolves to be.
That's right.
And so there is no,
Marcus Aurelius, the great the good emperor, the great pantheistic emperor, said, death is nothing but change, and change is nature's delight. So there you go.
Huh. Death is nothing but change, and change is nature's delight.
Yep. I'm just reiterating what you're saying. Basically that all things transform and transition, and nature is organic. Nothing is set in stone. It does what it does for the sake of its own existence, to perpetuate its own existence, to just continue to continue on in the most efficient, most utilizing whatever it can, whatever changes, and it adjusts and it changes to meet its environment.
Yeah, and it's ironic. It's ironic, but it was natural selection that ended up leading us here. Okay, and here's why. Okay, obviously the ability to reproduce thoughtlessly and reproduce in great quantities, of course, that's part of the horror, because that means that there's all these things reproduced, and then the some get killed, and then the ones better adapted to survive continue on.
Right.
But eventually, after all this time, it has led to some of us actually having a consciousness or a conscience developed enough to say to reproduction. To actually, it's like it carries this way. Reproduction is what brought us here, and then here we come along and we say no.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It's an ugly process that brings about a lot of beauty and complexity and order and design, and now it's taken us to a place where we can be in charge of our own evolution. We can choose whether to procreate or not. We can intelligently design our societies and our cultures, as Richard Dawkins would say. We are now at the place, as highly evolved sentient sapient organisms, Homo sapiens, can now creatively, ethically, intelligently direct our own evolution in terms of where we go, how we live, whether we're going to live sustainable lives in cohesion, in concert with the earth, or fighting and railing against it and against one another, in complete, discord. We need to come together and unify and live in harmony with nature, and in harmony with ourselves, and in harmony with the planet. And that, we've talked about this many, many, many times. So we're not going to get into the practical ways to do that, but being vegan is is a great start. Supporting the Zeitgeist movement, the Venus Project, learning critical thinking skills, like supporting local activists, supporting animal rights activists, becoming an environmentalist, learning about ecology and understanding philosophy and the sciences, and studying history and psychology and philosophy and sociology and anthropology, and learn the sciences, advance, and let's achieve whatever we can achieve in this life, in this short amount of time we have. Was it 60, 70 to 80 years we have on this earth? So let's do as much good as we can, and really, like, just look to nature and learn from nature. And where you see nature being blind and ignorant and deaf and dumb, well, you're not blind and you're not ignorant and you're not deaf and dumb. We are the eyes and ears and heart and moral conscience of nature. So let's be its hands and its feet, and let's do the good work that we can possibly do to make things better for all life. And that's the heart of Biopan, actually.
Yeah,
I
and
wanted to read
that's the thing, isn't it? Like here's something I wanted to say is, we, like earlier we were saying that our own existence just to ourself was not worth it. Just for ourselves, it's not worth it. And here's what I think happens, Poffo, is if anybody views themselves as an isolated system and they're only considering their own pleasure or pain, then everything becomes meaningless. I think what happens is that the selfish person comes to the end of themselves. And what happens when you're at the end of yourself? Then you find out that you're not yourself and you're not alone, but you're interconnected with all these other people and you affect other people. And Poffo, if you don't mind me mentioning this, what you told me on the phone earlier about how you were contemplating suicide this one day. Do you mind me bringing this up?
No, I don't mind, but let's be clear. This wasn't just like one day, like a few days ago or something. This is
Oh yeah, okay. This is a long time ago.
Yeah, this is about 13, 14 years ago. I'm not even good at math. Let's say at the end of 2000, at the end of 2006, at the end of 2006.
Yeah. Okay. So what I remember you telling me this, like you had a gun, and you were gonna kill yourself, but then you realized that if you did, some little kid could come in that park and then find you dead and be traumatized. And because you were thinking about that, that was what stopped you in that moment.
It was one of the reasons, honestly. It was, I got to be honest, it was one of the reasons, because I'm such a perfectionist. I felt like my cell phone had died. No one knew where I was. I was going to like leave a call, leave a message to let whoever know right before I did it, where my body was going to be. And my phone died, so that didn't work out. And then looking around, I knew that there are many children that frequent that park, and I just thought I would be traumatizing some little kid, some little girl would come across my body, and I just didn't want to contribute to that. The main reason, honestly, was, I guess the main reason is I didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to end. And so if there was if there was another way that I could somehow eliminate the pain and still live, I would do that. Okay, but I got to be really, really honest. I think the very, very core, and it's okay to be honest and say this, it was because I wanted to see my girlfriend one last time. I wanted to see the girl who had ripped my heart out, broken my heart, literally, like, just destroyed my life, and I had a mental, emotional breakdown. It was a whole series of events that led up to that, and then when that finally happened, that was just that was it. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I had a breakdown and I couldn't take it anymore, but I wanted to see her one last time. Like, she could have saved me if she would have came walking down that field. That would have been heaven for me, to have her come and just show up. I was out there for about 10 hours just deliberating, and it was the most traumatic. I had PTSD afterwards because of the event. But she never showed up. Nobody showed up. Nothing happened. No one intervened. God didn't speak from heaven. I never got a sign. It was me internally wanting last time, and also because things just weren't right, that I needed it to be a certain way, because I'm a goddamn perfectionist. I mean, maybe that's what saved me, because I just didn't want it to end that way. Without someone knowing where I was, so I wouldn't be out there rotting. My body wouldn't be out there. So I know the point you're trying to make, that it was altruistic, that even in my most selfish, self-centered, state of pain and contemplating this, I still was thinking about others, it's true. I was thinking about my girlfriend. I absolutely was thinking about my mom. If you want to expound on this, another point, actually, it's definitely significant that I should mention. I knew that it would destroy my mother. I knew that it would, I knew that she would never recover from it. I felt that, like, I didn't want her to go through the pain that I was going through. I didn't want her to. I felt that she would just lose it and get locked up in a mental institution. And ironically, I got locked up in a mental institution afterwards. The cops were waiting for me when I got back, and so I ended up going through even more hell trying to, you know, get out of that. But I was thinking about others, even in that state, in that horrible
Yeah.
state of emotional pain that I can't even
Yeah.
really even fathom right now. I was still thinking about others, and I had left some notes for my parents and tried to, you know, say my piece to everyone. But yeah, I'm still
Yeah.
here. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up, because it really cuts to the core of this issue. Am I thankful that I'm still here? That's the real question. Am I glad that I'm alive rather than being dead? Like, would it be better? Would it have been better if I would have went ahead and pulled that trigger and ended things then? Or am I glad? Like, have I ever had a day where I said, wow, I'm so thankful I'm alive. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad, so happy I didn't do that. Honestly, Chandler, I can't say that. I can't say that I'm glad. What I can say is, if I get my books published, okay, and if I can establish biopantheism, then everything will have been worth it, and I'll feel glad to be here, because I will have accomplished something. I will have done something meaningful with my life. I will have affected people and just left this world a better place than what I found it.
Yeah. And you know, here's an interesting thought, Poffo, and I think this is something that should be mentioned. At some point, we'll need to bring this to a close, but here's something I want to mention. Um, Now, here's the interesting part. What if there was nobody else? Like, imagine you were the only sentient life form. There were no other humans. There were no other animals even. You were the only one. In that case, the situation would have been different,
Well,
because the very fact,
all the problems that we have would be gone, first of all, and
yeah,
we'd have the run of the earth. It sounds like paradise, but without life, without plants and animals, I think it would be miserable. It would be hell. But if you mean just no people, that actually sounds pretty good.
yeah, like my ideal situation that I imagine. Okay, this is very idealistic, man. This is gonna sound like paradise to most people, I think. Okay, basically, there are no humans, at least not how we know them now. There are no carnists for sure. And there's no carnivorous animals, just herbivores, peaceful herbivores. Horses and deer and elephant, they don't mean anybody any harm. They just eat their plants, leave everybody alone, you know. See, that kind of a world would be so peaceful, so pleasurable. I don't know if I'd ever see such a thing, but that kind of world that I imagine would be so pleasurable that, yeah, I would want to live in that world as long as possible in that kind of a scenario.
I want to tell you something, Chandler. Cats and dogs, we can feed them vegan food now. Just think about this for just a
Yep.
second. We can feed cats and dogs. Cats are obligate carnivores. Dogs are omnivores. We can feed our domesticated animals vegan pet food that does not involve any killing, does not involve any suffering. They can thrive on it with proper supplementation. They can absolutely thrive. Okay, so what does that tell you? If we can do it on a small scale, we can do it on a large scale, on a grand scale. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's get to this last quote. This is from Macbeth, and obviously Shakespeare. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day, to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle! Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Now that is a man who has been through a lot of shit, and he's obviously feeling hopeless and pessimistic and disparaging about the events that went on in that play. And it rings true because the idea is, is it all futility? Like everything that we do. I think George mentioned this once. That the whatever good or evil we do, it's just a blimp. It's just a blink in time. It's like nothing on the cosmic scale. So it's like we struggle and we fight and we argue and we debate and we deal with so much psychological headache and heartache and bullshit. And yet it's like, put things in perspective, and human beings haven't even begun to make a dent on the just on the age of this earth. Okay, so what does it all mean? Like, what does it all matter? Because here today, gone tomorrow. We're like the grass. And there's many, many verses in Ecclesiastes, especially. I should have pulled some of those up. It's one of my favorite books in the Bible, where supposedly Solomon, or whoever the author is, wrote it, and he's very discouraged and just, dealing with saying, vanity, vanity, everything's meaningless.
Everything's chasing the wind.
Yeah, it's all chasing after the wind. But like, that's true, but it doesn't end with you, does it? You're not the only one here. Is that this goes on, this pageantry, whether it's for good or for evil, for pleasure or for pain, for this whole existence continues on in some way, shape, or form, and others carry on, and it doesn't end with you. It didn't start with you, and it doesn't end with you. So our problem is our vision is myopic, and it's too limited, and we need to expand our horizons and look at things in a broader perspective and say, I'm a part of something. I'm a part of something greater. I'm actually just a player, maybe a poor player that's strutting and fretting, but at least I had my my 5-10 minutes in the sun, and I made a difference. I left my mark, and if nothing ever comes about, if the human race goes the way of the dodo and goes extinct, and all life eventually ceases, how through whatever scenario you envision, if it's the expansion of the sun, or whatever, extinction events, volcanoes or asteroid hits, whatever, it doesn't matter, because we came into existence, we experienced it. If no one remembers, fine. Somewhere, somebody else will be experiencing something as well. There's always going to be life, I believe, always going to be the experience of life, that Omnia is always evolving and changing and popping in and out of existence in some form or another. And I think on some level, we talked about this once, maybe it's all recorded. Maybe it's all saved somewhere, and there's this gigantic movie screen, and there's just rows and rows and rows of shelves of all the experiences of life, of all the life forms, and this is someone's entertainment. This is someone's, we're creating the greatest storybooks ever that people
That's one long movie.
Sure, but
that's like the longest Google Hangout ever.
to an eternal being, to an infinite universe that is never ending, that is cyclical. Why not? Like our podcasts seem to go on forever, but they they'll end. They'll come to an end soon to all the listeners. If they're just like,
okay,
wow.
Yeah, one of two things will happen. Either this podcast will end, or the entire universe will end. We'll leave. We'll let people guess which will happen first.
I want to recommend some really good movies that deal with all of these sort of existential questions. Mr. Nobody, it's an incredible that movie. You've got The Fountain, that's another great movie about life and death, and there's all these films that are just like in my mind, that really can leave you thinking and contemplating, and and questioning things, and in a good way, questioning the sort of I don't know, it's the impermanent nature of life, but also the strength and power we have as individuals to influence and make a difference. And that's all anybody can really ask for, is to influence and inspire others, and create some form of legacy. That's what I hope to do. I hope we're doing that through this podcast. Can you think of any other films like that that are really deep and thought-provoking that you could recommend?
Well, I think we already mentioned It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, that's a great one. It's a great one too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else, man. I don't know.
We
Oh, I
okay.
got to tell you something. You'll find
Yeah.
this hilarious. Okay, there was this episode of Johnny Bravo. Okay, this was a cartoon. It was like one of the worst cartoons you ever saw, man. But it was like It's a Wonderful Life in reverse, kind of like I described. Okay, so and you'll find this hilarious. You don't need to watch this because I could just tell you real quick with the whole plot. Okay, so this angel takes Johnny because he said that he wished he'd never been born and that the world would be better off without him. So then this angel guides him through what the world looks like if he had never been born, and he finds out indeed everybody he knew was better off.
Yeah.
Okay, but guess what? But there was one thing that was missing: the imprint of him smashing his face onto the wet cement of the sidewalk. He had to be born, or the world would be deprived of his pretty.
I might have to watch it to get it.
Yeah, seriously, it's probably on YouTube somewhere, man. It was funny. That's.
Did you ever see Life of Pi? Life of Pi?
Oh yeah, I did. That was one of the most awful things. That was that. Okay, that was not quite as bad as Earthlings, but it was pretty bad.
No, I love that. We're talking about the guy, and he's on the boat with the animals, and he's telling the story from his perspective. That's the film, right? The Indian guy.
Yeah.
I thought that was a beautiful movie. I thought it was great. The tiger and stuff. It made you sad? Was it depressing to you? Is that why?
Extremely. My mom, when I watched that, that was one of the worst things that we've ever watched.
Chandler, do you realize that it was a metaphor? Like he was telling that story. Like that's not. They were all the animals. All represented the characters in his life. They represented people. But he told that story. It was a dual story. He goes, you can decide, what you want to believe happened. But remember, the tiger is him. It's himself. The tiger it represents him. You didn't get this at all?
No.
You don't watch that movie literally. Remember the end, man. He tells, it's like he's telling two stories, and the story that we watch on the screen is really the more fanciful, sort of metaphorical, just like where the Wild Things are. Like there are no monsters; those are all just aspects of his personality, of the kid, of Max. You gotta watch movies with me, man, so you can really analyze and
seriously, dude. I just saw what was actually happening in the movie, and
watch that movie again, and
no, man, I am not watching that again. Oh, seriously.
All right, listen. Just watch the end. Just watch the end again, where he's explaining this at the very end when he's in the hospital. Watch that part again. Cool.
Oh man, yeah. Well, anyhow, Poffo, yeah, this has been an extremely good talk, and I think that these issues are the only types of things worth discussing. That matters of life and death, so to speak, because there's all these people who debate all these other issues, whether it's capital punishment or war or euthanasia or abortion, and the vegan versus carnist debate is of course probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, matter of life and death. But what we did today, Poffo, is we were discussing the value of our life, and is life worth it? Is our life worth it to us? Currently our answer is no. Is it worth it to other people? They have to answer that. There's so many layers to this, and I really hope that people listening to the discussion got something out of this. I mean, so people, if you manage to listen to us in our long talk, you please leave us some comments. What you like? What are your thoughts?
Watch The Green Mile. There's another one I was thinking. The Green Mile is a beautiful film about a lot of the same questions, same issues. Yeah, I can like link up some. In the video at the bottom, like some titles for films and stuff. I think it's important that we think about these things, we contemplate. Yeah. So,
yeah, totally.
Thank you for listening. Thank you, Chandler, for allowing me to participate. And yeah, let's continue talking, and I hope it was, inspiring and influential, or at the very least thought provoking and educational.
All right. Yeah. So should I end the broadcast now, Poffo? Because I don't
Yeah,
want to
man.
cut. All right.
Well, no, I'm good. I'm done. That was my little
Okay.